So what has changed about work? We have this disruption from the outside, but how does it affect our work in particular? And different workplaces have different levels of how much they are affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. So because we have health hazards, you can expect that there would be safety protocols in place, and the safety protocols would take some getting used to. So, for example, no, you could expect that there would be stricter health screenings. You could expect that the work would be disrupted regularly by disinfections and any cleaning that needs to be done. You would expect, for instance, that face-to-face interface between people would be limited. So if before you used to do sales in front of a person, sitting with them over coffee, you would probably be expected to do things over an app or over a video conference platform like Zoom, for example. And the health hazards you can expect would be something that would take constant vigilance and constant attention, like we would be discussing later, because we do know that if you, for example, would be exhibiting symptoms, now, even if they're not necessarily COVID, they could be the regular flu, you would be more careful. And what more so if your coworker does the same. So there would be a high level of anxiety we could expect about health in general among the employees, and that could be a cause of stress, that could be a cause of strain, or that could be an added burden of new additional tasks you need to do to make sure that you are screened on a regular basis. Uh, Something that would take getting used to is physical distancing. You would expect work cubicles, for example, to be 6 feet apart. You would expect acrylic partitions to be between you and your coworker. But also, the physical distancing is something that you would expect during social occasions like mealtime or meetings. No? So I think the social distancing, social occasions, no, would be more stressful for Filipinos because we do like to talk over coffee or lunch and share our food and have that moment wherein we decompress with someone that's very close to us. Now, I think the stress of physical distancing is something that you don't feel in the beginning because as the COVID-19 pandemic is happening, as the changes are being introduced, initially you would expect that people would be more willing to have that kind of physical distancing. But as things go into regularity, as your work continues on its day-to-day activities, people might forget. And it's really the stress, no, that or the effort to constantly remind yourself that even though we think it's over, until we really could say, it's that it's safe and that the illness or the infection is no longer around, we really can't take our guard down. And so, what would change about work really is having to have that regular reminder that the new habits that we are putting in place is something that should be there on a rather permanent basis until it's safe to do so. A new way of working is telecommute. Telecommute is not really new. We even have a law asking us to increase our telecommute, but now it's being forced upon us. No? So some people after the quarantine would probably telecommute on a full-time basis. Others would be asked to report on site for certain days and then at home on other days. Other work arrangement would also be explored. You'll have your compressed work week, you'll have your 4-day work week, you'll have your only reporting on core hours arrangement, and then everything else is on flexi time. So this would also be a huge adjustment, and it really depends, no, because different people have different home situations, whether it's workable for us. So as previously mentioned, something that would change about work is the need for constant vigilance because the situation would qualify under VUCA. VUCA is an acronym that came about when they're explaining situations that are in the context of war. VUCA stands for things are volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So when you say something is volatile, no, there's really no security yet. No, it's unstable. Anything could change any minute. It's uncertain because we don't know whether the future will be positive or just the same or it will actually get worse. complex because the decisions that we need to do are not as simple. For example, no, how do we balance financial health with physical health? We need to work, we need to open the business, but when we do so, there's a trade-off, there's a sacrifice. And when we prioritize health and just quarantine ourselves and not work, the trade-off is where will we get our salary or food to eat for the next day. So it's really a complex situation that has a lot of factors in mind. Ambiguous because you don't know what's the right thing, you don't know whether or not this is the right way to go. The thing about COVID-19 is there's a lot about the virus we still don't know. So we have made reasonable assumptions. We say that it's a virus, it's probably transmitted through droplets in the air, and these are the ways that you can get it, and these are the ways that the virus would die. But we are still researching a lot of things. We are still researching, for example, how asymptomatic people would infect others. We are researching as well how whether or not someone who has recovered will get it back, or would the virus mutate? Now, there's a lot of things we don't know, and there would be a need for constant vigilance because business can get disrupted at any point. So a business can open now, but it doesn't say that you can be open for the next few months. If a new outbreak comes, if a second wave comes, that we have to be ready for new disruptions. And that's something that we need to think about. It takes a lot of physical and psychological preparedness to do. Some companies would have to reorganize. Even without a pandemic, a reorganization is stressful. For example, some businesses would have to change their product offerings because they may not be okay, that may not be viable. For example, if people's spending capacity is less, you would expect that some would start opening budget programs, budget offerings. If some services are delivered in person, they would have to find a way to deliver it remotely. So companies are reorganizing, and there's a sad thing also that some companies may even feel that they have to retrench employees or change your work roles, or limit your working reporting payable hours because they have to adapt also to the change that is about to happening. And this is something that's very, very stressful. For sure, there's be a higher reliance on technology. You've heard of the Zoom fatigue, no? If you're video conferencing for a lot of time, it's actually draining a lot of energy in different ways. And you need to think about techno stress also as you go back to work. Be prepared for invasive medical screenings, tests, and questions. You may be asked to do a blood test, a rapid test as you go back to work. You may even be asked to do a test on some semi-regular basis just for precautionary measure. Some questions would be asked of you. For example, if you become a person of interest or a person under investigation, you could expect that there would be contact tracing. You would expect that you would be audited for the way you have been doing things. So this could feel very invasive. They might ask about your medical history to determine your physical fitness to work for a certain situation, and that in itself would take some getting used to. The last two are related. No, you have compounding stressors within work and outside work, and maybe possibly resulting mental health issues. Compounding stressors, we are talking about maybe at home, right? If your partner is also undergoing stress because their work has readjusted, that could take its toll on you. Children now are being asked to study at home because schools, it's not yet sure if they will open. So that could be a stressor to a working parent. Now you have to balance work and taking care of the kids and do your home study program, supporting your children for school. So that could add, and that could really determine whether or not a person would be vulnerable to mental health issues. Um, so you do have your mental health concerns, no? You have your stress, you have your anxiety. We are thinking people would also be vulnerable for depression, but these are all just possible concerns. So that's why we're doing with this webinar, because we're hoping to do some preventive, protective programs, at least the information, getting information out there on how you could limit the impact of all of these changes in your mental well-being. Okay, so let's start. No, I think one way to psychologically prepare yourself really is to get the information that you need, and a lot of coordination with HR and a lot of research could be helpful in helping you get prepared, because you have to know what are the givens, you have to know what are the things that you need to do. Top of mind, I would think that some questions you can ask HR is, do I really have to report on site? Do I really have to work for in a social setting? um, the laws, no, are different from collaborative arrangement that we could have, because the law may say yes, no, they could ask you to report to work if you're fit to work, but a good culture to have in a company, especially in something when something like this is happening, is for management, HR, and employees to sit down and really just look at the job description, really look at the tasks that are being done by and the services performed by a particular employee, and see, no, what in what ways do we protect this employee from health risks, in what ways do we protect our customers from health risks. And if you could negotiate ways wherein you could limit exposure, then that's a good discussion to have. No, you can ask HR, if I do come in, no, like what do there, are there supports for commute, or are there accommodations you can do for me? For example, no, for people working with us, what adjustment we could do is for them to limit their commute hours, public commute hours, by compressing work schedules, on-site work schedules, and then maybe limiting also the on-site opening, the opening hours of our physical offices. So in that way, you could help them. You could say you could come in, but only on certain days, and that could be something of a relief. No, it doesn't remove the anxiety, but it could help provide a certain sense of relief when the work resumes. Is this the right time to return? Businesses have to think about that, and it's a dialogue you can do. So you could ask employee companies how prepared they are, what are the things that are in place. This is a thing that also HR could look at now, the real compliance to occupational and safety standards. So that you could see, no, maybe we are expecting everyone reporting on site eventually, but maybe we could do that in a phased way. No, we could decide what are the markers, what are the milestones. For example, is the physical setup already changed enough that it would ensure the maximum safety possible for our employees. So until we hit that, no, the physical safety, the provision of commute help, support, safe public transportation, then we could look at that so that we could restore a little of our sense of safety. Do I need to get tested? Is a question. I do think that even though some people feel that it's an invasion of their privacy, it's really helpful thing, not just for you, but for not just for other people, but for you. A company that would ensure testing for everyone protects you as well, because you could limit the possibility of catching COVID from somebody else. So ask how they will keep you safe, and ask what are the protocols in place, or what are the support in place if you do get sick, or if a family member of yours gets sick and you need to take a leave in order to support your family member during that time. What are the quarantine procedures, for example, and what are the arrangements that would happen, so that you have an idea, and you don't have that pervading sense of insecurity. Okay, if I get sick, for example, if I need to be monitored whether I have the symptom or not, is the company willing to allow me to telecommute for the meantime until I get results? If I do get sick, what are the maybe medical support that I could expect, and what are the medical support that I need to procure for myself? And what if my coworker gets sick? No, what is the protocol in terms of how the team would manage? So are there contract tracing procedures in place, so that you could all be protected? So all of this, it may feel like it heightens your stress because you're asking all of these questions. But in a way, having everything black and white is really helpful to one's mental health, one's preparedness to go back to work, because nothing is parang you're not worried that policies will only be created when the problem comes, and this is empowering to know that your company is actually thinking through how they can help you restore confidence in coming back to work. But the personal thing, no, the health anxiety that you have is a different thing. Um, and there are tips that we can look at, we can think about when it comes to managing health anxiety. If you're anxious about your health, no, that's normal. If you're anxious about your family's health, that's also normal. In any of the surveys that our company has been doing, when it comes to what's your highest stressor, whether at work or in your personal life, it's really the fear of the illness. Because and this is a reasonable, rational fear, because this is a serious condition that have resulted in death. So we do need to think about that. But at the same time, even though it's just and right to to be afraid of it, no, it really shouldn't take over our life. And there are ways to manage this anxiety so that we could really restore a certain sense of safety, no, psychological and personal safety, when we navigate the new normal. So the first thing that it's important to think about is to not obsess about things we cannot control. Um, you could look at things, no, what is something that you can do something about, something that you could influence, or something that you really have to surrender yourself. So for example, no, whether or not there would be an outbreak in your barangay, an outbreak near you in your workplace, is not something that you can control, short of really checking in on everybody else, no, that is not within our control. So overly worrying about that, no, thinking about that every day, so much so that it consumes your energy, is not really helpful. At some point we have to surrender that there are things that we cannot do, no, you do the serenity prayer na, I have to accept the things that are just is, I cannot change. But so that you don't get so that the emotions that you have do not get repressed, we do suggest that you could schedule a worry window. A worry window is like 15 or 30 minutes wherein you indulge the worries that you have, the anxieties you have, and voice them out or write them down or talk about them to someone, or just like think through them. And this way it doesn't get really repressed, or it doesn't get suppressed, that it affects you in indirect ways, because emotions would come whether or not you choose it. It's really your body's instinct whenever something is happening, and anxiety in particular is our instinct when there is a threat. So if you set it aside, no, you refuse to think about it, it actually just gains momentum. So decide, for example, maybe you could say every 6 p.m. to 6:30, I would allow myself that worry window. But you put that boundary, when those 30 minutes are up. You can set the worry aside and focus on the things that you do can control and are good things happening in your life outside of this pandemic. Because this doesn't, although the changes are massive, no, there are still a lot of things happening in your life that deserves your attention, especially things that will give you positive emotions and will replenish what the stress of the moment has taken from you. So yes, no, what anxiety does is make you think of worst case scenarios. But the way to deal with catastrophizing is to really just to ask, what if, and plan accordingly. So for example, no, me personally, my worry is that my children will be infected, and that I would be in a position where even though I could afford to go to a hospital, the hospital will be filled and no one would accommodate it, and that plays in your mind. So ask yourself, okay, what if? Because you need to have a backup plan in order to feel empowered. So you could ask yourself, okay, what if my children do get infected? What are my steps? So you could explore your options already. So what you could do is you could have a list ready of nearby clinics you could go to. You could have a list already of what's the steps that you would take, the best action you could take, even though they won't perfectly address the problem, just so you would know that there is something that you can do, and you need not be paralyzed by the fear of the situation. Lower your expectations but place within the context of hope. Um, it's very important that we are able to adjust our plans and plan only based on the information that we have at the moment. So if we're overly optimistic, no, for example, while I'm recording this, it's still quarantine. No, if you're overly optimistic and you say, yeah, the quarantine will end next week as promised by the government, you just get stressed out if it's extended. So be hopeful. We would like to be hopeful and aim for the best. No, sana, no, this ends. Sana the vaccine is here in 6 months. But lower your expectations so that they're based on reality and that you could have room to adjust your plans according to the information that you have at that moment. So you can say, okay, I'm going to expect that this is something that's going to happen because this is the number of cases for now. This is the financial capacity for now. So based on what you have in the moment, adjust your expectations accordingly. Very, very important, be informed about what's happening, but limit it to information from credible sources, and limit your information only to your information seeking activities only to a certain time of the day. So you don't have to be bombarded by information about the situation COVID-19, for example, because too much information is also a stressor, especially if the information is coming from fake news, especially if the information is coming from people who, while well-meaning, are alarmist and really just adds to your stress. So the only thing you can do really is to employ reasonable precautions. So based on the information that you have, to what extent can I protect myself? That is good, no, as good as possible, but not really overdoing it. What do I mean by this? No, so your reasonable precautions is really your physical distancing, your cough etiquette, your disinfection, your washing of the hands properly. Um, Anything above and beyond those recommended precautions, while good, no, may tax you. So, for example, no, I have read there's a Facebook post going around that the best way for you to prevent COVID is to gargle your mouth with warm water every 15 minutes. Now, I'm not even sure if that's medically sound because it did not come from a reliable source, no, a research-based source. But imagine the stress of doing something every 15 minutes and then the stress of worrying if you missed a window, if you miss a 15-minute and a schedule of doing it. If you're not even leaving your house and your house is disinfected enough, then reasonable precaution is really just to to stay there and ensure that you don't touch surfaces that are not sanitized. So every precaution has to be within logic. If you obsess about it too much, that's going to stress you and take away from your physical readiness to do work. So just a brief list of resources where you can get reliable information. You can look at the official Facebook page of DOH. You could go to the official website of DOH. You can go to the official website of World Health Organization. And for occupational safety standards, you look at the DOLE website that's related to occupational safety, or what are the prerequisites of a well workplace. If you're getting your information from unreliable sites, that might not be helpful for you. If you're watching this and you're HR, I suggest you have a compilation of this. Even take a moment to get infographics or make them so that you could really release that information to everyone and everyone is on the same page. Okay, so further tips on keeping calm. As I said, it's not helpful to suppress what you're feeling. So what you can do is you can take a quiet moment at home and write down what you're feeling. Ask yourself how I am, and then non-judgmentally just acknowledge. Okay, I'm scared today. I'm sad today. I'm overwhelmed today, and tell yourself you have the right to feel that. affirm yourself for your emotions, validate your emotions. So the first person who should be kind to yourself is you. If you make judgments, not that I'm weak, I'm vulnerable, I can't keep it together, I must be a non-resilient person for having these thoughts. That really doesn't help you at all. So just allow yourself to feel. If you want to cry out of the frustration, that's all right also. Crying is good, no? Science even has proven that crying has the ability to release toxins in your body so that they do not affect you. So you feel good after. It doesn't solve the problem, but it gives you a clearer mind so that you could really attack a problem in a more logical rather than emotional way. To keep calm, if ever the health anxiety is getting to you, practice mindfulness strategies. So, mindfulness is being present in the moment 100%. So, for example, in your mindfulness, you can close your eyes, do some breathing, and just scan your body. No, look, attend to from head to toe what your body is feeling. Mindfulness can also just focusing on what you're enjoying, a sensory experience you're enjoying at the moment. For example, the mindful eating. So if you're getting stressed out, take work aside first and take a moment to really enjoy the coffee that you're drinking. Enjoy the aroma, enjoy the taste, no, namnamin mo basically, so that you would have that moment wherein you are just focused on what's happening instead of the fear of the future, of things that have not happened yet. You can do your listening intently to calm music. You can do your aromatherapy if you're into essential oils. So those are things so that will help you ground yourself in the moment instead of being afraid of something that has not happened. You can write what you think, what you feel, talk to it to a close, trusted friends, or you could write better statements. Now, better statements is a way of dealing with anxiety. Particularly symptoms of anxiety that we know logically are not real, but because we are in a state of fear, we think it's real, and that gets to us. So, for example, no, thinking that I cannot breathe, I'm anxious, I cannot breathe. You can change that, change your thoughts, and reframe it by saying, I think I cannot breathe. I feel I cannot breathe, but actually I can, because maybe it's your imagination, it's the anxiety that's making you think that you're being suffocated. But you could test that theory by inhaling and exhaling, and you can say, okay, I'm actually breathing, no? So I just think I cannot breathe, no? But actually I can. And that's something that may be able to calm you down. You can expose and mask and expose the unhelpful thoughts. So many thoughts that we have actually exaggerates our distress. For example, no, some thoughts are, I will never be able to get out of this. Or the thought is, I actually hate my teammates for not being very proactive. So, minsan kasi, ayaw mong magsalita, hindi mo siya na-acknowledge, naiipon siya, nagiging sama ng loob siya. And it adds to the stress. So, if you have thoughts no, that are not helpful, don't judge them yet. Just look at them, write it down, and then you can study them. And then after understanding them, you can do something about it. Okay. Now, the other change no, that we can expect from the new normal or the new way of doing things is, again, the actual change of ways of working that we have to do. Um, I want to just take a moment to talk about habits, because a lot of us may have difficulty adjusting to doing things differently than we used to. For example, disinfecting your computer, your workspace, or disinfecting your space after every client that you talk to. So, minsan makakalimutan natin, no? Kasi hindi tayo sanay. Or minsan we would be angry, no? Bakit kailangan ko itong gawin, no? Nakakapagod. Um, it's helpful to think, no? That's, as far as studies show, habits actually take 2 months before they become new behaviors. Take 2 months before they become automatic. No, the exact number of days is even 66. No, it's specified. It takes 66 days to get into a new habit. So minsan, isipin natin, no, don't be hard on yourself if hindi mo siya makuha agad. For example, no, the people who are new to technology, 'di ba? Or new to making a lot of video conference. So, minsan, ito na lang yung luma na lang, the old way of doing things. No? I prefer to do it this way. Pero if nahihirapan ka, it doesn't mean that you're too old to learn or medyo rigid ka na. No? It does take time to do habits. We just need to persist and remind ourselves. And the important thing to learn is even if you miss an opportunity to perform the new behavior, it doesn't affect the habit formation process. So minsan kasi pag nakita mo naglalapse ka into an old way of doing things, sabihin mo, ay, wag na lang, no? You give up everything. Di ko talaga kaya, so wag na lang. So for example, di ko talaga kaya mag-physical distancing during lunch, so wag na lang. Even if napansin ninyo, no, na, ay, we violated the rule, we violated the new behavior, go back to the new behavior the next day, because even if you miss that opportunities, even if there are gaps in your implementation, it doesn't mean you will not learn the habit eventually if you just persist in doing it. So a way to facilitate new habits is the 3 R's, no, the reminder, the routine, and the reward. So if it's difficult for you to implement a change immediately, always make sure that you have a reminder. There's a trigger. You can make that reminder. For example, you can have a post-it in your workplace, or a poster, even a big poster, or even your desktop photo is there's that reminder of what you need to do. So if the new way of doing things, for example, is to always ensure that you have your mask and you have your shield on, then as you open your computer, there is that reminder: mask first and shield on. Or common siguro na laps na ginagawa natin is, if we want to eat, for example, 'di ba? We take the mask off and the shield off. Pero what if the guideline is, better to you have to take the mask off because your mouth needs to be open, but you need to keep the face shield on, and you forget that kasi ang comfortable kumain with it eh. But you can have that reminder, no, like put it in your dining area or your plate na, yeah, you have to eat with your shield on, because that is the way to protect everyone from the virus. So have a reminder so that you would implement that new behavior. um, Make it a routine, no, if you can make a regular schedule of the precautions or the changes that you need to do, that's actually good. And a nice tip there is make it easy to start. So if there's a lot of changes that needs to happen, do it gradually. Now start first with inserting the change that's urgent, and do it in small doses, make it workable so that it doesn't feel overwhelming to do. And of course, no, give yourself a prize in the end. No, reward yourself if you did the behavior really, really consistently. For example, no, if the habit is on self-care, like taking a natural supplement for boosting your immunity. If you're able to do it, no, or exercising every day to boost your immunity, if you're able to do it for a specific period of time, give yourself a reward so that it will reinforce, it will make it a joy to actually do that behavioral change. And in the context of a company, I hope we are in the same page, no? That you can't really change a habit or a new way of working alone. One thing that this pandemic has done for us is asking us to choose we rather than me. What do I mean by this? No, you're doing these precautions. You're wearing your mask. You're sanitizing. You're disinfecting. You are practicing physical distances, not just for you, because you may be okay. Most of the workforce are well enough that if they contract the virus, they probably would recover. So bakit natin to ginagawa, no? In fact, in Western countries, like in the States, people are rallying because they don't understand the imposition to their own freedom. But it's really not about you. It's about us. When you do this change, you are protecting those who are vulnerable, and you are protecting the people you work with and you love. So the cooperativeness that's needed in a workplace is very important. And if we adopt that mentality that I have to do this, not for myself, but for everyone, for the nation, or for the country, so that we could recover faster. Unless everyone cooperates, there's really no way out. It will just keep on recurring, and the situation will have no end. For leaders, no, when you're implementing a change, and it could be any change, it can be a change in job role, change in responsibilities, you look at these four things that are important in change talk, or talking about how to implement change. You can talk about people's desire to make change. So you can look for statements that show that people are want to change. I want to do this, and if they don't want to do that, then you can process, no, you can have a conversation and say, okay, how come that this is something that you don't want to do? What's keeping you? I would like to listen. And that would help facilitate a conversation about possible hindrances which may be valid for the new habit to be implemented. You can look at people's ability to make change. um, for example, not just the use of technology. You can't just say, okay, everyone will be transitioning to using this app. What if they are not technologically savvy in the first place? So they don't have that ability. And it's important to have a conversation to process. Do you feel able to do this change? And what do we need to do to help you feel that you are more competent at doing it? You can talk about reasons for considering the change before you implement it. Bakit natin to ginagawa? What's the higher purpose? And even what's the need, no? What are we sacrificing? What is the trade-off if we don't implement this change? In any company transitioning back to work and implementing a large change, the conversation, the change talk is very important. The communication has to be clear. It has to be as complete as possible. And it has to take into mind not just what needs to be done, not just the task, but the feelings of people, and the psychological impact of all of these changes, so that everyone will feel that they are supported, even if they are things that needs to happen. In fact, not just just communicating your vision and communicating what you are doing. Like for example, yes, no, we're doing this change, but the change is to ensure that we generate enough income so that we don't have to lay off everyone. Even a conversation like that is very, very helpful, because psychologically that helps everyone prepare and get their yes, no, get their support for the changes that needs to happen. um, you could reflect. There's a way of conversing called motivational interviewing, wherein you can do reflection technique. Uh, you you restate a feeling that is being said or unsaid in a certain statement, and you ask open questions to process change. So every time, for example, you hear a coworker or you hear your people around you say, "Hindi ko na kaya. I can't go on this way. This is too much." Okay, so you could just reflect. Now you realize it's time for you to do something different. So where do you think you should begin? So every time people are frustrated, you can think about it as a signal that maybe there are things that we need to talk about. No, something different that we need to keep doing so we are more prepared. Or if they are saying, I haven't been always capable. So you could reflect by saying, I think you want to believe in yourself and your ability. You are frustrated that you're not capable because there is something you want to be capable. So can you tell me about your strength? Let's focus on helping each other find what's positive about themselves that would allow them to accomplish the changes that's about to happen. I just have to find the time whether I want to do this change or not. So maybe this is becoming a stronger priority. So where are the opportunities that you can do this change? So it's very important that to have that moment wherein supervisors or even peers coach one another so that they can adapt to change better. So let's adopt a we mentality and support one another and teach one another so that we can all get to the destination of safety together. Okay. Um, Want to introduce lang a concept called the flux mindset. This relates to what I said earlier about things being vulnerable, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Anne Ryan said no that the way to deal with this pandemic, for example, or any complex change is to have a flux mindset, meaning makes plans with the assumption that the plans would change. Rather than making plans at all, this means getting used to continuous change as default. So we're talking about change talk, but it's important that everyone is leveled off in the idea that the change could change, the new change could be replaced by a different change. No, so it's something that's very constant. So the way really to psychologically prepare yourself is to position yourself in such a way that you would succeed regardless of the scenario. So maybe sit together as in a meeting, or maybe you, if you're watching this webinar on your own, make a make a scenario A, scenario B, scenario C, and then see how you would succeed in each scenario. Plan ahead how you would succeed. So for example, okay, so if I'm being asked to telecommute, what's the position that I need to do? How will I succeed in it? If I'm being asked to work on site, well, how will I succeed? If I'm being asked to sadly take a part-time role rather than a full-time role, and my salary will be less for the companies to survive, how do I make myself succeed? What kind of supplementary income do I need to pursue so that it would work for me? So do a scenario check and then be prepared for any change no that might happen, and that would help you retain a sense of efficacy, the belief no, that you can do the change or you could survive in the new normal that's about to come. Okay. All right. There's a separate webinar in the CLiC library that relates to telecommuting or working from home, but I want to do like a quick run through of tips you can do if ever you are being asked to work from home in the new normal. So very important that you set a workspace, even though it's your house. Try not to work on where you eat or where you sleep, but rather maybe have a table there where you would be working. Ensure that it's a proper working space, it's a conducive working space. That means it's well lighted, it's comfortable, it's free from distractions to the extent possible, so that you could have that mind frame or mindset conducive to working. You have to create boundaries between work and home. I know that's easier said than done, but it's a two-way communication. So it could mean that you will tell your children whether or not you can be bothered or can be um, asked to do something for them on a certain time. So you could say, okay, from 9 to 4 p.m., this is actually mommy's work time. So this is, we could have our family bonding time after or before, no? And sometimes the boundary has to be, ikaw, no, giving yourself a boundary kasi minsan ikaw yung hindi makalet go. So for example, no, um, one common thing about working remotely is sometimes the communication will come at any moment. You'll get an email on a weekend, for example, or you get an email or an inquiry outside work hours, and ikaw yung hindi makaresist ng temptation to open your email account and check what's the new communication. So unless your work requires you to answer things in real time, many things could wait, and you have to protect your family time, your personal time by that boundary. Sometimes no in the culture kasi sa company may mga companies wherein people do communicate outside working hours, so you may be it may be a good idea to tell HR or your manager to add that to the wellness program, ensuring that people are not bothered outside of their work reporting hours, so that you could really protect your physical and psychological well-being. One way to manage techno-stress is to avoid multitasking. While you think it's a paradox. Now, some people think if they do several things at once, it becomes more productive and less stressful. But studies do show that for some people, um, the multitasking actually is more stressful. So, for example, you're attending a video conference over Zoom about a meeting, but at the same time, you are opening emails and you are attending to your children on the side. No, you're muting the the video and you're removing your video on the screen so you can do other things. That's actually stressful in the long term because there's a higher load on your mind whenever you're doing this. So to the extent possible, let's practice mindfulness. Let's really just focus on what we're doing. What the effect of that is it actually helps you accomplish more because you're faster and more effective. Multitasking makes you think you're accomplishing more, but you're probably giving just a percentage of your attention and your energy on one task because you're trying to do them at the same time. Very important no help with techno stress is to maintain proper posture and to mind eye strain. You have to position your laptop or your table in such a way that it lessens the stress on your back. So as much as possible sana yung table nyo is aligned with your elbows, not too high or not too low, and that you are sitting in a chair that's really meant for working. Otherwise, sasakit yung katawan nyo and that will just add to stress. So mind-eye strain, if you're working in front of a screen all the time, try to buy a screen protector, rest your eyes in between, take breaks, no, and that's related to the next step, which is if too much video conferencing is stressing you out, especially straining your eyes. Certain conversations baka kaya sa phone na lang, no? So that you can just close your eyes and just attend to the audio if carry naman. And check if you have to respond in real time. So like what I said, no, just because they message you now doesn't mean it's an urgent thing that you need to do. So some things may have to wait, and that could help you not feel on like you're being attacked by tasks all the time. Maintain life balance. So even if you're telecommuting, have personal time, go out, no, do your social work, do your socialization to the extent that it's safe. Um, do your spiritual religious activities, take care of your physical health, go for a jog, for example. Do what you can to feel that even though lines are blurred and you're quarantined, you are attending to the different aspects of your personality. And if possible and safe na do work outside from your home from time to time, so that hindi ka mabagot, na hindi ka mabore, and you don't feel like you have lost a lot of freedom. So if there are, for example, coffee shops that are rendered safe already for working or co-working spaces, you can rent them out from time to time if you like, or even just a park, di ba, na medyo conducive. Labas ka ng konti to work there so that you don't see the same thing every day and you don't feel quite boxed in when these are happening. Okay.